Good morning, everyone. Welcome to week number 9 of Startup Launch Class. Great that you're watching again. Just a quick test question: is the audio working okay? Can you just, if someone could just answer in the chat window real quickly, just to test our new microphone. Okay, thank you very much. It's working perfectly. Thanks again for watching week number 9. So we'll zooming in into the end goal of Startup Launch Class. Before we get started, just first practical items. Of course, if you have any questions during this session, please use your chat window on your right-hand side to ask questions, so we can answer them as quickly as possible. This will be a bit more interactive webinar, so please use your chat window. Today we'll be discussing interview techniques. That's why we're going to ask you a lot of questions. Also, if you experience any troubles, for instance, when we show your video, please just refresh your browser. That should do the trick. Okay, quick look at the numbers of the participants of Startup Launch Class. You can see them here, the numbers up to this week number 9. We're closing in up to almost 700 customer interviews, so that's a pretty impressive number there. The number of customer interviews led to 59, so almost 60 experiments for the startups, which led to 24 pivots in their business model, so a big change within their business model. Most of them pivots within their customer segments or within their value proposition. All of these learnings have led to 28 leads for all the startups or potential customers, and up to now we have 5 committed deals, so actually paying customers for one of the startups. So that's pretty impressive there. Closing into the end of a Startup Launch Class, we hope that all the participants, of course, will be able to close in more deals and more leads as the end goal closes. Okay, so for today we have an optional course. We ask you to tell us what kind of topics you want to discuss today, and a lot of you have asked us questions on two things actually: on interviewing techniques, on when you talk to customers, what to do, what not to do, but also on if we can show you some experiment examples. So besides qualitative or open interviews with your customer, what are other types of experiments you can run with your startups, why this type of experiment specifically, and what to do and what not to do. So today on the webinar, two topics: interviewing techniques and experiment examples. So let's get started with interviewing techniques. All of you have been talking to a lot of customers or potential customers for the last couple of weeks, of course. Let's call these qualitative interviews. And of course, these are a huge source of information. And we recommend you to always keep that up, always keep that doing, of course, interviewing as much as people as possible. Really valuable. But what if, when you talk to these customers or you're conducting these customer interviews, what if these people not always tell the truth when you're interviewing them? For instance, if they're trying to be nice to you, right? If you pitch your idea or pitch your first ideas, first thought. So for conducting better customer interviews, there's an interviewing technique, what they call a mom test. So we have a short video on that we would like to show you. So that was a video on the mom task, really valuable, let's call it a technique or a manner on how you should ask questions when you conduct qualitative interviews with your customer. So mom test approved questions, as we call them, really help you to ask your questions in such a way that if you would ask your mom, would she be able to lie, right? That's basically the fundamental there. So what we want to do now is show you a couple of test questions. So we're going to show you a couple of questions, and it's up to you. Is this a mom test approved question, yes or no? And we'd like you to use the chat window on your right hand side to answer if this is this a good question to answer in your interviews. So are the following questions mom test approved? So let's have a quick test question there. If you're going to ask this question in your interview to a potential customer, do you think this is a good idea? Is that a good question, yes or no? Is that a mom test approved question, yes or no? And why? Or why not? So the thing about this question is, it's quite hypothetical, right? Do you think this is a good idea? You ask people about their opinion, which is not always a bad idea, but there's nothing tangible there at which a customer could interact, could react to. So it's a bit too broad, too abstract question there. Let's take a look at the following question. What do you think there? Is this a mom test approved question? Would you buy a solution? Is that a good question? Yes or no? Also there, the answer is, well, probably you shouldn't ask this question. Again, quite too hypothetical there. Would you buy a solution? A customer could think, well, or potential customer, well, it depends on the solution, of course, depends on the price of the solution, depends on the features maybe, and you ask for something in the future. Would you buy? Well, kind of depends, right? So again, not a great question there. So if we look at the following question, how do you solve this problem now? Is that a good question, yes or no? Mom test approved question. Well, this is quite a bit better question, because you ask for a current experience or a past experience for the customer, right? You have this specific problem you talked about or you discussed, and how do you actually solve this now? You don't ask for your own proposition, for your own product or your own service. You're not pitching. You're just asking people for their experience. So the following question, tell me something about the last time you experienced this problem. What do you think of that question? And also there, that's an excellent mom test approved question. You're asking for people, again, about the problem. You ask them to tell them a bit more about them or about their past experiences. When did it happen? Why did it happen? How did it happen? So it's a great question on just trying to get as much as information as possible from the guy or girl you're talking to. So the following question in your customer interview, how much would you be willing to pay? Do you think that's a good question, a mom test approved question, yes or no? How much would you be willing to pay? Well, again, that's another great question. Why? It's a bit too hypothetical there, right? You ask for a customer about their expectation or future behavior in this question. Would you be willing to pay? It's easy to say, well, I'm ready to pay. I'm willing to pay 10 euro or 100 euro because I don't have to pay right now, right? So it's a bit too open and a bit too hypothetical question. Following question then, how much does this problem cost to you now? And compared to the other question, of course, this is a much more concrete question. Again, you're asking about the current problem. the customer, potential customer, is experiencing right now. How is he or she solving it right now, and what are the costs involved then in solving this problem? So another question then, do you have the budget available to buy this solution? It's maybe a strange question to ask. First of all, it wouldn't be the first question you're going to ask in your customer interview. This is more a question you're going to ask business to business wise, right? But it is a perfect question to, and also remember the guest lectures, for you as an entrepreneur to decide, am I sitting across the right person? Am I talking to the right person? This is a perfect question to validate if the person you're talking to has the budget and has the ability to actually make the choice on using your product or service. The next question, and the final question, mom test question, who should I talk to next? Do you think that's a question you can ask or should ask in your customer interview? Again, also perfect question to ask in the maybe in the final phase of your customer interview, right? You're asking for recommendations. You've talked to this certain person, huge amount of information you received from him, and you ask for a recommendation. Okay, who should I talk to next? So what you're trying to do in mom test approved questions, and when you have open interviews or qualitative interviews with customers or potential customers, you try to ask them a lot about, well, telling them, you let them tell stories about their problems, right? So how often do they occur? Or what are the details of this specific problem? When do they happen? Why do they happen? And how big is this problem then? You try to ask them on current solutions. How do they solve the current solution, or how do they solve the current problem or problems now then? And what are the solutions, and how much do the solutions cost? Or what are the gaps in the current solutions? Questions like that. And you try to ask them about behavior in the past, right? Because that's the only thing that is certain. It's really difficult and it has less value to ask them for future behavior, right? That's pure hypothetical. So these are, we think, perfect guidelines for you to remember when you have qualitative interviews with your customers. What you're trying to do in open interviews is try to dig deeper and find emotions. If you see someone you're talking to looking away or not really responding to your questions, or needs to think about certain items you've just asked, try to dig deeper and try to really find what's the emotion there. What is the emotion in the current problem that they are experiencing right now, in the current solution they're using right now. So you can really have a valuable and a bit deeper interview. So when people respond in an interview like this, well, it sounds great. I would love that. I would love your service. Do you think that's a valuable response? Well, in this case, it is a nice thing to have, of course, that people react in this way to your product or your service or the idea that you're pitching. But again, this is a bit too hypothetical, right? It has no commitment. And if you look at the mom test, this is specifically an answer that your mom or dad would provide to you, right? And also, if we look at the following example, or the reaction someone could give to you, cool, let me know when it becomes available. What do you think about that? Also there, right? I mean, it is pretty a nice thing to have, that people react like this and not reject your idea right away. But again, it's a bit too hypothetical, too free. Just let me know when it becomes available. You know, maybe you're trying just to get rid of you. And what do you think if someone reacts like this? I know some people who might be interested. I can introduce you to them when you're ready to move forward. This is an answer, I guess some of you, a lot of you have received over the last couple of weeks. What do you think of this type of answer? Well, I mean, it's not wrong and it's not right. The thing is, I mean, there's no commitment right now, right? When someone says, well, when you're ready to move forward, I would ask to, okay, but When is that then? What do you mean by ready? Why not now? The nice thing here is though that this person, potential customer, maybe is not the right person for you to talk to, maybe not the right decision maker within the company, but he is ready to introduce you to some people. And as you have experience in the last couple of weeks, I mean, introductions you get via are probably the most valuable that can happen to you. Okay, the next remark or the next answer you could get in an interview. I would definitely buy that. Is that a good answer? Yes or no? Again, I mean, it's probably a bit the same as the previous answers. It's nice that someone is saying that, but on the other hand, there's no commitment right now. If you have the specific product or service here at hand, why is this specific person not buying that right now then? Why is there the reference to the future? So basically what we always tell people, always in conducting interviews, and when we talk about mom test approved questions and remarks, usually when there's a compliment in place, but there's a bit of hesitation, so reference to the future or I'll get back to that or whatever, generally people are not really that interested, right? So what you're looking for is true commitment, and commitment could be money, so actually paying you at this moment, could be time, or could be reputation when it comes to referring you to other people within the company or other people he or she might know that are interested in your product or service. So that being said, on the mom test, some general conclusions is, well, what you've have experienced, of course, in the last couple of weeks, when you talk to interviews, I mean, it is sometimes it's even an art. You have to experience it, get a bit more to get better in it, of course. And most important there is to leave your ego back home, of course. When answering the questions or when asking the questions, try to avoid the future. Try to avoid talking about the future, because then your interview becomes way too hypothetical. Don't try to generalize, right? Try to be specific on specific problems that the customer or potential customer has experienced. And again, don't use hypothetical statements, or don't try to avoid hypothetical statements from your the person you're talking to. So again, good questions, of course, mom test approved questions are questions, especially when you have qualitative interviews, about his or her life and experiences, of course, right? And problems that he or she is occurring or experiencing. Good questions are about behavior in the past, because that's factual, right? That's factual behavior. You ask for specific details again, right? You don't try to generalize, and you ask for certain specific commitment, whether it's time, actual money, paying you for the product right now, paying for the service right now, or the commitment could be reputations. So that being said, on mom test approved questions, which is a very valuable guideline in how to conduct open interviews, let's see if there are any questions so far on qualitative interviews or conducting interviews. Not really so far. So let's move on to the next topic of today, which is, qualitative interviews, of course, is a huge, like I said, a huge source of information, really valuable way of talking to your customer. But besides qualitative interviews, of course, there are tons of different type of experiments. The participants in Startup Launch class, of course, also have run several type of experiments. But the question was to have a bit deeper, closer look at different type of experiments, and in what phase can you use what kind of experiments. So what you see here, of course, is a famous Albert Einstein, one quote of him. If I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about solutions. So they're basically asking the right question, or to be able to ask the right question in a certain phase of your company is fundamental, of course. But basically all the questions you need to ask are basically all gaps in your business model, right? Or all fundamental holes in your business model. So type of questions you want to ask right now, or who is my customer, or what job do they want to get done, or what channels should we use to reach them, or which features should we buy, should we build first, right? And is our solution good enough? Or besides that, I have tons of questions maybe in this phase of your startup that you want to have answered. And all of these questions, again, are these fundamental items in your business model that you want to answer. But the key is asking the right question at this moment, right? So which is the most important question? Is it who is our customer, or which feature should we build first? So let's take a look at the following example. So let's say you have a great idea. You all have great ideas, but let's say this weekend you have another great idea on a new shoe. You have an idea of this new shoe that cures plantar fasciitis, right? So issue with your feet. And you decide to put up a landing page as an experiment. And this is just one example you see on this slide here. So you put on a landing page with your value proposition there, with an image of your product there, the price, even a buy now button. And let's say on the left-hand side, you spend roughly, let's say, €1,000 on Google AdWords, leading traffic, driving traffic to this specific landing page, right? And I mean, you wait to see to the money just to roll in, because this is a perfect idea. You spend Google AdWords, good buy now button, landing page up. So, I mean, what could go wrong, right? And let's say a day after that, you conclude that the conversion rate is exactly 0%. So what should you do now? Should we give up? I mean, that's basically what the landing page experiment tells you to do, right? There's not enough demand for this product. But what is plantar fasciitis? And is the price right enough? Is the color of the landing page maybe shouldn't be green, or should be red, right? All of the people coming to the page, are they asking the same thing? How does the shoe specifically work? So again, the key there is focusing on the right question. And if you take a look back at the example, is the test failing then? The landing page test, is it failing because customers aren't interested in your product or your value proposition? Or is the test failing because they don't understand the value proposition? Or are we maybe using the wrong channel? It shouldn't be online. Maybe should a physical store be the right channel? Maybe Google AdWords isn't the right channel. So in this example, what you did there, we were asking the question, does anyone want my product? When we should be asking the question, does our customer segment even understand what the problem is, what plantar fasciitis is? Or even before that, who is our specific customer segment, right? So, like I said, focusing on the right question and focusing on the right question in the right time, and then also defining the right experiment, I mean, that's fundamental when we talk about running experiments, right? So what is helpful is basically distinguishing two types of questions. And you see here on this slide. So the first thing you need to ask yourself is, do we need to learn about the market or the product? Or do we have a clear hypothesis we can test to evaluate? Or do we need to generate a clear idea? Right? So this, let's call it for now a framework question, can give you some pretty good guidelines on what type of questions you want to ask or you need to ask now, and what is the type of question that follow up after that question, right? So do we need to learn about the market or product, or do we already have a clear hypothesis we want to evaluate or test, or to generate a new idea, right? So what you see here, and I've shown you before, but we go a little bit deeper in this webinar, is when we have these type of questions here, they lead to this framework here. And I mean, a framework is always a bit of a oversimplification, right? But this framework should provide you some really valuable guidelines on running experiments, on defining experiments, and before that, asking the right question at the right time. So what you see here in the 2x2 framework is, again, when you see on the vertical axis, you see market versus product. So do you want to know something about your customer segment or market? Or do you want to know something about your product? And is it more than generative research? So do you want to learn more, right? So question number one, about the market or the product. Or is it already a bit more evaluative experiment? So you have a clear hypothesis you want to test or you want to evaluate, or to generate a new idea. So on the example of the shoe landing page, right? It was a bit on the left bottom there, but the thing is there, only if you have a clear hypothesis of who your customer is and what you think they will pay for, then you can conduct an evaluative market experiment, right? Such as a smoke test or a landing page. A landing page is just one example of a smoke test. But if we just go through the 2x2 framework, if you don't have a clear idea who your customer is or what his needs are, you should do a more generative market research, right? Like data mining on customer segments. I mean, there's tons of open data, of course, out there on the web to really deep dive into customer segments and their needs and their current problems, or just proper desk research, or just open interviews, right? So that's the item in the matrix or in the framework you want to start out with. And then moving on to a more evaluative experiment. And also, similarly, if you have a clear hypothesis of which features will solve the customer's problem, you can do an evaluative product experiment, right? Such a Wizard of Oz testing. We have an example of that later on this webinar. But also there, before that, if you don't know which features will lead to an acceptable solution, you should do or can do a generative product research, such as concierge product to try and come up with new ideas. Also there, again, qualitative interviews are really a valuable source of information there, maybe even in combination with paper prototyping, right? Or co-creation, just sketching things out with your customer, with your potential customer. So again, if we look at the 2x2 framework, so market, product on the left and right hand side, and generative research versus more evaluative experiments, actually testing things there. These are the questions that you want to answer. These are the right questions you want to answer at a specific point in time, right? So if we look at a couple of examples, so top left there in market generative research combinations, you try to have a deeper understanding of your customer. So who is a customer? What are their pains? What jobs need to get done? And maybe is the customer segment too broadly defined for now, right? And then moving on to a more evaluative experiment on your market or on your customer segments are questions like, are they really willing to pay? Or how much will they pay then and why? And how much will it cost to sell, right? So it leads to a bit deeper understanding of your customer segment in combination with your value proposition. Moving on to the right-hand side then, if you want to have experiments or research on your products or on your value proposition, more generative questions are like, okay, so how can we solve this problem then? If we specifically know how big this problem is, what these problems specifically are, how big the customer segment is, how can we solve it then? And what form should it take? So their co-creation together with your customer is a really perfect source of information. And then moving on to a more evaluative experiment on your product, on your value proposition, are, okay, so I have a solution in mind. Is this solution then working? Are people using it, right? Which solution or which features are maybe even better? And why do people like or dislike certain features? So it really helps you on defining your feature set and also defining your MVP 1 versus MVP 2, for instance. So, of course, these are the questions. Translating this to concrete experiments is the fundamental next step you need to take then. So let's have a look at some examples, again, by using the 2x2 framework. So again, what you see here, like I said, a framework is always a bit of an oversimplification, right? But this, again, should give you some proper guidelines on what kind of experiments you can think of when you want to conduct an experiment, and you want to learn more on your market or product, or you want to actually have more an evaluative experiment. And we're going to go through some examples. I'm going to show you some examples in a couple of minutes. But just, I mean, like I said, in the top left corner, when you have more generative research on your market or your customer segment, Like I said, customer discovery interviews, like you have been conducting in the last couple of weeks, still a huge, valuable amount, source of information, of course. Ethnography, we've talked about it, I think a couple of weeks ago, just really observing your customer, your potential customer segment in his or her, well, let's call it natural habitat, but just in their context, right? What are they doing? What are the problems that they're facing and why? Well, a bit more old school techniques are using focus group or surveys, right? But you really need to be careful on the insight these high number of experiments sometimes give you. Well, moving on then to a more evaluative experiment on the market side, right? What you see there is 5-second tests. We showed you an example of a 5-second test a couple of weeks ago, but also gave you the list of the toolboxes to create a 5-second test. But again, also there, data mining or just factual and actual market research is really, really valuable, and I really strongly recommend you to do that on a periodic way, just to deep dive dive deeper into the market and really understand what are the other value propositions out there in the market. Like I said, smoke tests, like a video, explainer video, like a landing page, really helpful to give you some more insight in your market when you want to conduct a more evaluative experiment or just generate more ideas. We have a couple of examples of that later on. But also just some examples on the product side, right? Generative research examples. A solution interview, just basically the same, also an open interview, but you try to talk with customers about potential solutions, right? Maybe just a co-creation session, sitting there, blank page, sketching out your potential solution. A demo pitch is also a great example, of course, of an experiment in this phase. And a picnic in the graveyard, basically the same, market research, but then specifically on your value proposition. So what have been other value propositions out there in the market that try to solve this problem, and what were their results? Why have they failed? Just to trying to get a deeper understanding there. Well, moving on then to the next phase, or more evaluative experiments on the product side, so on your value proposition side there. Couple of examples you probably know, right? Prototyping, so clickable prototypes, or maybe even a bit lower fidelity, so paper prototyping. And Wizard of Oz testing, which is a bit higher fidelity than just a concierge testing, right? In the Wizard of Oz, you pretend that you are the functionality, that you are the technology. But also there, just actually functioning products. So this is the phase of actual functioning MVPs. Just show it to your customer, let them interact with them, and getting feedback on it. It's a huge amount of information there. So if we look at some concrete examples from the market on how they run certain experiments, here's just one example to start out with. Bolt Mobility. These were guys that were producing or planning to produce electric scooters. And the only thing they built there is, and you see that a lot when it comes to crowdfunding, of course, it's an amazing landing page, of course, there. And they were actually able to raise money just through this landing page and emails. You see an example of the email on this page, which had a pretty concrete call to action, right? So click to invest now, and also a good overview of their current results. So 70 app scooters sold, only a few left. So really concrete action there for you to really invest now, to buy now. So these guys, this is a perfect example that they didn't even have a physical product out there, and still they were able for people to commit money, to commit energy to their value proposition. Another example of that is the ocean cleanup. I don't know if you heard of it, but a pretty famous example of this young guy who had an amazing idea on how to clean oceans in a better way, or more suitable way. And also the ocean cleanup just had this landing page with a bit more videos there, so more video explainer page there. And he successfully also raised, well, you see there, a couple of million there on just a landing page, and asking me people for their commitment. Another example of how you can run experiments is this one, Buffer app. And this is actually pretty funny. What you see here are actual screenshots from his landing page back then. It was only a couple of years ago. And if you will go to the new website of the Buffer app right now, you will see it looks totally different. So that's like his MVP 3.0 probably. But what he wanted to do there is first, of course, test if people are interested in this product after he conducted some open interviews. So what you see here is it was his first landing page on people committing to the product, right? And what you see on the bottom of the page there is just, well, like the title says there, you caught us before we're ready. So he could just monitor how many people subscribe to the product. And the product basically helps people who are really active on social media to not tweet all of the tweets or just all of the social media items on 1 second, but just can buffer them into 1 day. But next to that, after that, when people were interested, he also, of course, wanted to know if people are ready to pay. So then he added a second item on his landing page, which is this, what you see here on this slide is his pricing page. And again, the product wasn't even working there. Better yet, he didn't even have a product yet, just an idea. But he just wanted to test if people were ready to pay, and if they were, okay, what are the price ranges then that he had to think of. So this pricing page, and again, when people clicked on it, you see on the third slide there, this third screenshot, which is sort of an apology page that the product wasn't live yet, but gave him a huge insight on that people were ready to pay and also how much they were willing to pay. Well, another example, and it's a famous example, of course, is Dropbox. I mean, the cloud storage now is pretty famous. Everyone knows it. Google Drive, Dropbox, Microsoft, what's it called, OneDrive. But Dropbox then was, of course, one of the first that was actually trying to create this product. And what they did, and you should look up on YouTube how the video looked like back then, was an explainer video, because the product back then, you have to imagine, was pretty difficult to explain to the broad audience then, of course. So the founder, Drew Houston, created an explainer video on what Dropbox specifically is, how it works, etc., and asked for people to subscribe on the email list. And the day after that, he had over 100,000 people actually subscribing to the product. So he knew that people were interested in Dropbox. So that were just several concrete examples on experiments you can run. Again, probably this framework is the most useful, will provide you the best guidelines on just examples of experiments you can run, but more importantly, what is the right question you want to answer with this specific experiment. So hopefully this can give you a lot of guidelines on running experiments in the upcoming weeks. Let's see if there are any questions on experiments so far. Well, not really, but if you, of course, have any questions on experiments in the upcoming week, you can always reach out to us, of course. Well, let's have a look forward then on for the participants of Startup Launch Class. This Friday, our work session will be, of course, about pitching. So we have a guest lecture. We have a guest coming, the founder of a startup called Shaycon, also a prize-winning pitch. So he will teach you a bit more on pitching, which is really valuable. And all the participants have the actual time to create and work on their pitch. Again, all the other viewers, if you have any questions on qualitative interviews, on running certain experiments, please reach out to us, of course, during this week. Well, again, thank you very much for watching again to Startup Launch Class week number 9. Have a great Monday and see you next time. Bye.